Once there was a group of people who all worked in the same place, but they had a problem, and they didn't even know that they had a problem. They had a magical power, but it was a power that they weren't using. It was the powers of stories and storytelling. And this meant that their keyword cluster and hreflang recommendations were being ignored by the client. Luckily, there was a brave and wise and desperately handsome hero who knew lots about how stories work. Unfortunately, he had no way of helping the people because they lived all over the place and were busy with their own tasks, which were in asana. So he was sad. However, he used another magical tool called internet to help communicate that information across the gulf. He spent hours and hours of challenging and courageous work creating a short 74-slide PowerPoint presentation. Finally, it was finished, and the day of the presentation arrived. He was nervous. He attempted to call in sick, but he knew that this was in fact important work, and so he bravely soldiered on. The group came together, and the hero of our story told them all about the magical power of stories and the mechanics of stories, explaining how each and every one of them can benefit from this power regardless of their role. The group listened, they talked, they asked questions, and they discussed it amongst themselves. And not only did they all learn something useful, they all enjoyed being together in the same room. Then the group all sent thank you gifts to the hero and lavished him with praise to show their deep gratitude. And from that day on, they were all able to use the magical power of storytelling to help them inform and persuade their clients and their colleagues. They all felt happy, healthy, and self-actualized. The client even said, "Fine, I'll put you in touch with the developer to sort out the redirects you mentioned." It was awesome. And that is the story of this presentation. Okay. So why am I telling this? Thank you for the intro, Mark. My own intro read back to me. That's why it was so complimentary. So I'm Gill. I've been a professional writer for 23 years. I was a journalist for 10 of those, telling the stories of other people through interviews. I'm currently the content marketing director at Selesti, but also sort of related to my writing is about sort of 5-6 years ago, I thought I might as well write a novel. I could do that. And so I did. The first one was awful. And so I then started to study and to research what it is that makes stories. And I found actually there were lots of overlaps with what I was doing in content marketing, not just the articles that I was writing, but emails, pitches, all the other kind of communications that I was doing. And so what is it about stories that resonate? We respond to stories because we get emotionally invested, because we empathize with the people inside it. It makes those stories relatable. It also really helps to simplify complexity, which again, particularly useful in SEO. It's an aid memoir. I bet most people in here could tell me a story of Noah's Ark. Something you haven't probably thought about for decades maybe, but I know that if I say that to you, you'll be able to say that story. It's because stories help you to remember things. They're an aid memoir. They're inspiring, they're motivating, that's fairly obvious. And also they help us bond. As we all relate to elements of the story, we cheer for the hero and cheer when the bad guy dies, etc. So they're powerful. And so why is this relevant to marketing? Well, it's because we want our clients and colleagues to be emotionally invested in what we're trying to tell them. And I would add as well that I feel this is particularly relevant to SEOs because what we do, what you guys do, I'm SEO adjacent, what you guys do is heavy on data. And so giant spreadsheets and what have you, is how do you turn it into a story to make your client who's not an SEO, your colleague who's not an SEO, how do you get them emotionally invested? We want them to understand what it is, but importantly why, because the why will drive the what, the how, and the whether. And of course, aid memoir, we want people to remember what we said. So if you can use a story, if you can turn it into a neat story, chances are they're more likely to remember it. And of course we want to inspire people, we want to inspire our clients and colleagues, clients in particular, so that they say, yes, let's do that. So what is a story? Most people will know this. What's the story made up of? What's the structure? Beginning, middle, and end. Brilliant. But what is the beginning, middle, end? What does it have to be? Well, you have the problem or the quest, your journey and the obstacles in solving it, what the solution is, and the so what. Again, fairly obvious, maybe to many. And of course, we're doing this all the time, instinctively. When you're at Christmas around the dinner table telling me a hilarious story about your younger sister, or what happened yesterday, we're telling those stories. And instinctively, aspects of the beginning, the middle, and end, we'll be doing it. Again, because it's kind of in our DNA, stories are. That said, there are still particular structural things and tools and devices that you can do to turn things into stories and to make your stories work harder to do the things we just mentioned. I'm going to talk a little bit, very briefly, about characters. Characters are at the centre of the story. We're humans, we want to hear about humans and what humans do, we can relate to them, so they're important. So it's important at the beginning to set up the role of you as the communicator. Is it your story? Is it someone else's story that you're telling? And who is the person receiving this story? Why do I care? So it's important initially to set up who the roles of the characters are. And of course you can do that implicitly. You don't have to send an email saying, "Dear Sabrina, you are the recipient of this email." It's Gill here, the sender of this email. But you do need to sort of have that in mind when doing that. I'm not going to talk about characters because, again, it's more of a sort of a fiction thing, so for the sake of what we're going to talk about more of the mechanics and the frameworks of storytelling. But I would be remiss if I didn't talk about the role of characters. Because, of course, if you're trying to persuade me of something, it's got to be about me. I'm the client. You would frame everything around me, please. So if you do that, you're more likely to be successful. So how many of you have received an email or been in an email chain and thought, I have no idea what this is about? Why is this for me?
A CC, you mean?
Sorry?
A CC?
Yeah, CC. You see like a chain of email and you see one coming across.
Times.
Yeah, right? And I know that some of you will be people sending those emails as well.
I told you.
There you go. Sending stuff like this. There you go, I've done a content audit. Cheers. What am I supposed to do with that? I'm SEO adjacent and I look at this and go, come on, look, what are the tasks? What am I supposed to do? What's the end result? Why are we doing this? Who for? So turn it into a story. Take that spreadsheet, turn it into a story. Or the reason for the spreadsheet, turn it into a story. What is the actual problem that we're trying to solve? Reiterate that. What is the journey that you've been on, or that you're going to go on because of what you found? What are the obstacles in our way? Is it that the tools are too expensive? What is the solution? And what is the resolution and the results of that? What is the so what? Okay, so that's our beginning, middle, and end bit, covered that. This really is the meat of this whole presentation. And this, it can be used as an absolute kind of framework, but also you can move things around. So the status quo, that's where we are now. And in most stories, you start off with the status quo, and then there's a problem happens. And the status quo is you have a client, let's say. And the problem is whatever that problem might be, technical, budgetary, etc. The promise is related to the quest. Because you've got this problem, you're going to go on this quest. So tell them what the quest is. You've got this problem, so we need to do this. The promise is sort of related to the quest, and it's basically saying, if you stick with this story, you're going to find this out. Just to do a quick sort of reference from literary, anyone who reads crime novels will know exactly what a promise is. And the promise is the dead body. And the promise is, who is this dead person? Who killed them and why? And if you read this book, I promise you, you will find out. So that's the promise. So dropping that in around the time of the problem is to say, if you stick with this, if you deliver this stuff, if you read on, this is what you're going to get. Because we've got no patience. And actually, weird, I think TikTok is literally just promise. It's just that's, get rid of all the rest of it. So you go on the quest, we're going to go on this quest. In fiction, this is powerful, and you guys will be finding this in your work, and you can use this as well, which is surprises. We all love surprises, twists in movies like Sixth Sense. I was looking into your data and I found, ta-da! So we love surprises, they're powerful, they help emotional investment. Obstacles, it was very tough. It was very tough to do this, but we're going to do blah, blah, blah. We're going to use this tool, this plugin, etc. So you can deploy these or not deploy those two. Critical choice, it's always the bit where, in the movie or the story where, you know, does Frodo throw the ring in or maybe keep it for himself? Critical choice. And so you, a lot of the time, you will be putting this to your people who you're communicating with to say, I've told you all of this, and you need to decide whether you are going to allocate the budget. Do you want it this week or do you want it next week? It's a critical choice. So it makes it high stakes, makes it important. You then get your climax of the story, whatever that is. I'm trying to think of an SEO climax. All I can think of is Frodo. So you have the climax of your story. For the sake of this presentation, really that is your, and I've got these the wrong way around, apologies, is the resolution. So we've been on this journey. Here's the climax, here's the work that we've done. It's been deployed, here's the report. And the resolution is that it's worked, or that it hasn't worked. The so what. And the very bit on the end is the bit that was interesting to me when I was sort of studying, researching this, is reversals. It's a bit after the end that says, because of what we've done, this is how it now is. It's not just the solution, it's the bit on the end that says, because Frodo threw the ring in, the world goes back. It doesn't just finish with Frodo throwing the ring and then the credits roll. You get this nice bit on the end, the reversals. And that makes it emotionally satisfying. So hopefully people are sort of looking at this thinking, oh yeah, I sort of do a bit of that, or maybe I could do that when I, pitching such and such, or talking to a client who doesn't really understand what I do. And I'm not going to grind through this, it's not important, but just to say that my story at the beginning, hopefully, while it's very naff, it flowed, right? It didn't feel kind of jerky or clunky or forced, but actually afterwards, I put it into my grid and it basically follows all those elements, bing, 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 all in order, and I didn't even do it that way. Group of people is the status quo, problem, magical power, etc. And I won't dwell on this other than to make the point that it just flows fairly naturally. And these stories can live everywhere. Whatever it is that you do, I mean, obviously we're mainly SEOs here, I know there's lots of writers here, but we're doing pitches. Turn your pitch into a story. It's that's a really obvious one, very useful one. But when you're doing reports, I work with SEOs on reports, and it's like a million graphs and crazy names of diagrams that I don't know the name of, and the client's sort of staring at it going, can you use some commentary, a couple of notes, this, etc. You guys have probably all been there, maybe you're on top of that. But turn your reports into stories. Make them consequential. Meetings, mission statements, all the about us content on people's websites, social media, even in very small character counts, you can still tell stories, maybe not with the entire grid, but you can have beginning, middle, and end, you can pick surprises, obstacles, etc. Podcasts, interviews. So these things, emails very importantly, important for telling stories, making them cohesive when you're introducing ideas and selling things. So ask yourself, what is the problem? Why is it a problem for you? If I'm asking you for something, if I'm suggesting something, why is this a problem for you? And therefore, why should you care? That's one of the most important things, is making people care. What are the stakes? What do you stand to lose and or gain? Important part of the stories. What's yours and my role? We talked about that. What will happen? Again, what's the promise? If you do this, what are we going to get? And how will I know what success is? Again, I know we talk about, what does good look like? It's always a sort of a marketing term, so it's fairly self-evident. Okay, now this is the bit that I wanted to get to. I'm not sure how much time I've got, maybe 5 minutes, maybe 10. I want to write an SEO story with you guys. So I'm going to start you off. The status quo is that you have a lovely client who you've worked with for a year or two, and the problem is that their traffic is in quite fast decline. So as SEOs, shout out, you don't have to use Menti, you can do, shout out, what's the quest as an SEO, if that was the problem that landed into your inbox, what's the quest, what would you recommend? What are we going to do? Say again? Content audit, brilliant. So you've got a problem, but don't worry, we're going to go on the quest and do a content audit. Anything else that we want to do about declining traffic, shout outs and stuff?
You're figuring out what the problem is.
Okay, so we're going to investigate.
Yeah.
Lovely. So the promise might be, we're going to tell you the results of our investigation. The quest is to investigate.
Yeah.
So on the investigation, what are the kinds of obstacles that you as SEOs come...
Money.
Money, boom. So money, big obstacle. Any other obstacles in our...
Management.
Management, right, people, yeah, absolutely. Reddit?
That's an external factor.
The client being obstructive and petulant.
Right? That's basically the story of this.
Any examples?
So we've got lots of obstacles. Brilliant. So it's a rich story already. Give me some of the surprises, some of the things that you have found whilst doing these investigations that you're like, didn't see that coming. In your investigations.
Paid links.
Paid links. Plagiarized content.
AI content.
AI content. There you go. I remember once working with a client, and they had it was at Further, and they'd non-indexed their homepage. Do you remember that? It's like, oh. So all these lovely surprises. Critical choice. Ultimately, this is going to be expensive. You're going to need hours of content creation, whatever it might be. So the critical choice, is the client going to go for it, do we think? That's our critical choice, it seems to me. Any others? Any other ideas for critical choices? It might
Pricing.
Pricing, absolutely pricing. It might be that you are now recommending something that you as an agency recommended they do something different a year ago. So you've got a critical choice about, do you say to them, oh, ignore what we told you last year, you've got to do this now. That's maybe come across people, a couple of little sly nods there. So critical choices. Okay, so the climax. Climax is, I guess, maybe a bit of a slow one, but you look in your report and you see that you started to turn, the curve has gone up, or they signed off. They signed off, they said, yep, we're going to do 4K a month retainer, content, tech, etc. So tell me what the, I have got this the right way around now, the resolution, what is the resolution to this story that we've told so far? Ideas?
Traffic's back to where it started, if not improved.
Yeah, lovely. That's it. So you see improving traffic. And that's, again, the reversals and the resolutions. It's not a perfect science. But hopefully, I mean, does that, what we just described, it didn't feel like a strange SEO story, did it? It felt like stuff that you guys do all day long, day in, day out, right? It wasn't an odd fix. And all we did was just follow that framework. And I reckon if you had to put that into an email, that would make a fairly clear, if not compelling, story. And now how many people think that they have done part of that in their communications?
In storytelling?
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. So grand. So in summary, then, follow these steps. Introduce your characters and the roles. Who is this consequential for? Explain the problem and the quest you're going to go on because of it. Take people on that journey, or the journey that you've been on already. Well, we've been doing research, we've been crawling your site, etc. for ages, and we found the following obstacles. So obstacles and the journey. And then take great joy in describing the solution, the resolution, and the reversals, the so what. And if you follow that in your emails, your pitches, just even have it in mind when you're communicating in Slack, or wherever it is that you're communicating with colleagues and clients, then hopefully your communications will be more compelling, people will listen, people will say yes more, and go on that journey with you. And with that, your hero's journey is at an end. Thank you very much.